and welcome to the Hardcore Soft Skills Podcast. This is Yadi Caro. In each episode, we'll learn about a different soft skill and lessons on how to apply them. Soft skills are the non-technical skills that actually make hard skills work. So if you are in a highly technical field and want to get that project going, or if you are getting ready to advance in your career, this podcast is for you. Thank you for joining me in this learning venture. Today, we will talk about curiosity. Curiosity is such an important skill to have today, and we can certainly learn how to cultivate it. According to research, people with high curiosity are more inquisitive and generate more original ideas. Curiosity can also help us have more positive engagement with our teammates. This is a skill which can certainly give you a competitive edge. My guest today is driven by curiosity, and I'm extremely excited to have her on the podcast. Dr. Deborah Berebichez is the first Mexican woman to graduate from Stanford University with a PhD in physics. She also completed 2 postdoctoral fellowships at Columbia University's Applied Math and Physics Department and at NYU. When you hear her story today, you'll realize how her curiosity drove her to confront adversity and follow her calling. She uses her education and background to make science approachable to a wide range of audiences. Debbie was co-host of the Discovery Channel's Outrageous Acts of Science TV show. She also appears as an expert on the Travel Channel, Nova, CNN, MSNBC, and numerous international media outlets. Currently, she is the chief data scientist at data science company provider Metis, where she leads the creation and growth of data science training opportunities. She is committed to help women and minorities follow STEM careers. In today's episode, we talk about her story, her fascinating work, and she gives us specific lessons to start cultivating curiosity. Let's listen. Thank you so much for joining me in this episode today. I'm super excited. I must say I'm very, very excited and appreciate your time.
Thank you, Yadira. I'm doing great, connecting from New York City, managing during these challenging times. So it's going as well as it can, but here we are.
Yeah, and I certainly appreciate your time and taking time to talk to us in this episode. I was very excited when you accepted to do this interview because I've been following your career, and it's very admirable what you've been doing in terms of educating others about sciences and your journey as well. And thinking about the topic of curiosity, I thought you would be the perfect person to talk about curiosity because you could help us cultivate that skill. And it seems that in order to succeed in the career in sciences, curiosity is very important.
Yes, curiosity is one of my most important values. And I think we are all born as children, we're extremely curious. And all children are researchers by default. And they investigate their surroundings, and they're always sort of questioning new ways of doing things. Why can't I jump from here? What's wrong? And why are testing their boundaries and testing the rules that we set on them? Why? Because that's exactly the mind of a curious being that is who is trying to understand the rules of the world. Similarly, I think scientists are great observers of nature, and they're kind of playing with it very much like children are playing with different toys, etc. And they're trying to discover how the rules or the principles with which the universe works. And that's why from a very young age, I was attracted to science, because I was an extremely inquisitive child. And I would always ask my parents questions on why do things work the way they do, and how does light interact with matter, and why objects all fall down, and at what speed are we orbiting around the sun, and all these questions that I had. And unfortunately, I grew up in Mexico City in a community that, like many others, discouraged women in particular from pursuing careers in STEM, in science, technology, engineering, and math. And I was told from a young age that I better pick something more feminine to study.
Wow.
So I wasn't really supported in my desire to expand my curiosity through science.
Wow. And so did you pay attention to that advice, or how did you react to that advice?
Yeah, so Yadira, unfortunately, after many years of hearing that it wasn't acceptable for a woman to pursue a career in physics or math, which were the two sciences that I liked, and I also heard that I needed to be a genius in order to succeed in those two, and I felt like I was not a genius. And all these negative comments from the exterior world, I guess I learned to hide my love for physics and my curiosity, and I started to lose confidence in my abilities to do math and so on. And so when it came time to pick a career to do in college, a BA, I remember talking to my teachers in school and the counselors in school that were supposed to guide us towards our BA and to choose something to dedicate our lives to. I remember saying that I wanted to become a physicist, and everyone telling me, oh, that's going to be too difficult. It's very hard to find a job.
Wow.
As a woman, it's very hard to be competent in it and to be able to create a family, which is the most important thing. And so you probably should pick something else. So I was given so much of that kind of feedback that when I graduated high school, I decided to study philosophy instead of science, because I was told that philosophy was similar. It was a field where you ask a lot of questions about the world and why we're here and so on. But at least it was more feminine and acceptable. And so I started studying philosophy in Mexico City at a private university.
Wow. Did that satisfy your curiosity going to study philosophy, or was that kind of, were you wanting more after studying that field?
Definitely not. I remember speaking to the head of the philosophy department and telling him that I really liked philosophy and liked reading the opinions of centuries old thinkers about the world and the universe. However, the methodology of just thinking and using logic to prove things, were one way or the other was not enough. I needed evidence. I needed experimental evidence to tell me if my thoughts one way or the other about the world were correct. And only scientific methodologies and experimenting with nature would give me that. And I remember he said, I'm going to put the word in an envelope and of what you're going to choose, because I was really torn whether to continue with philosophy. I was very good at it, or to just venture into the unknown and go and study physics, not knowing that I was ever going to be able to make it. So he put the word either physics or philosophy in a sealed envelope. And he said, in 4 years, once you've graduated and all that, I want you to open it and tell me if I was right in predicting where, what your choice will be. And I carried that envelope with me. And I remember that I was very lucky at the time, because my parents were paying for the private university for me to study philosophy in Mexico. And that was about 1/8 of the cost of what it would be if I were to transfer to an American university in the US. And so I decided to apply behind everyone's back to become a transfer student in the US. And I say that I was very lucky, because Brandeis University, a small school in Massachusetts, decided to consider me for a scholarship, the Wien Scholarship. And after back and forth and doing an extra AP exam and then writing more essays, I was told that I won a full scholarship to attend Brandeis University as a group of 2 people that every year get this full scholarship to attend without paying tuition. And so it was just such an incredible opportunity that's how I went. And for those of you who are still wondering what the envelope said, I did open it after graduating summa cum laude and with both BA in both majors in philosophy and physics from Brandeis. The envelope said physics. So even the head of the philosophy department had understood that my curiosity could only be satisfied with scientific exploration.
Wow, that's amazing. And how it's great that you continued, you're persistent to see what opportunities were out there to study, and you continue that. And then not only that, because then you also got a PhD in physics from Stanford. So how you pursue it all the way into like the highest.
I'm definitely a warrior, and almost the fact that people were telling me that I shouldn't do it made me want to do it even more. And I must say, it wasn't easy. I actually had a very significant mentor while at Brandeis. I was studying philosophy my first semester. I was a transfer student, and I had only a year and a half left. Well, and that semester, so 2 years to complete my major and graduate, and that was it. That was a scholarship for 2 years. And so I decided to have the courage to take a class in astronomy, a very generic introductory course. And I became friends with Rupesh, who was a graduate student, who was a teaching assistant for the class. He came from India and he was pursuing his PhD in astrophysics. And I became very good friends with Rupesh. And he was the first person to really believe in me. And he said I wasn't the typical student that came up to him that just wanted to get an A in the homework. He said that my eyes would light up every time I asked about the universe and about how the world works, and that I was really deeply curious, and that curiosity and perseverance were the most important ingredients to succeed in STEM. And so he said to me that he thought I had the talent to pursue it. He was the first person to really tell me that. And so that summer we were walking in Harvard Square, and I remember that my eyes got teary, and I looked at Rupesh and I said, I just don't want to die without trying. I don't want to die without trying to do physics.
Yeah.
And so Rupesh called his advisor at Brandeis, who called me. He was the head of the physics department, and he said, don't worry. He said, because Rupesh said, what are we going to do? She has only 2 years, and the physics major takes 4 years to complete. Wow. And Dr. Wardle, his advisor, said to me, we've done this in the past. Ed Witten, if you know who he is, switched from history to physics many years ago. So we know what to do with you. And I was laughing inside because I knew who Ed Witten was. He's the father of string theory, who clearly is a genius. He's a professor of physics at Princeton. And I said to myself, there's no way I'm going to be able to do something like that. And he said, Ed Witten did exactly this. So I'm going to give you this book, which was an alien language for me at the time, Div, Grad, and Curl, vector calculus in 3 dimensions. If you're able to master this material by the end of the summer, we'll let you skip through the first 2 years of the physics major, and then you'll just enter in your junior year so that you can complete the entire major in only 2 years. And this is where Rupesh's generosity shined, because he decided to devote his entire summer to tutoring me and mentoring me in the first 2 years of physics. And we didn't have much time. So it was derivatives on Saturday, integrals on a Sunday, first 3 chapters of classical mechanics on Monday. And that was the idea. And then I always share the history of what Rupesh did for me, because whenever I wanted to pay him for all the tutoring that he did, he told me a story of an old man who used to climb up the mountain to arrive at Rupesh's hometown of Darjeeling in India. And he used to teach Rupesh and his young sisters music, the tabla, which is an Indian instrument, English, and mathematics. And the old man, whenever Rupesh's family wanted to pay him, said the only way you could ever pay me back is if you do this with someone else in the world. And
Wow.
that's how Rupesh said the same thing to me and passed the torch to me of this pay it forward
Yeah.
concept. And that's how my mission in life began, to inspire and encourage other women who are as curious as I was to do something in science, but who for some reason couldn't pursue their dreams.
Wow.
That's how it all started.
That's amazing. The having that influential figure to help you out and just motivate you and kind of like push you forward. That's amazing. And in terms of your role today, how would you describe in terms of what you do in your day to day? Because now you're a data scientist. How do you combine, or how would you describe to people what you do on your day to day?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I still consider myself a physicist first most, because it's my heart has always been in physics. And after Brandeis, I had the courage again to write an email to a random professor in California who I had never heard of, because I thought that his research was amazing and I was very curious about what he was doing with DNA and the physics of DNA. And then all of a sudden I discovered that when my advisor in Mexico told me, well, you realize you just wrote to the most recent Nobel Prize winner, Steve Chu. And I was like, oh my goodness, I'm not a shy person, but had I known that, I probably wouldn't have written such a casual email. And so again, having the courage to believe in my curiosity and stand behind it and not let people tell me, that's it, you have your BA, now you have to go back and lead a life of, conforming to the norms of where you grew up. And so I decided to leave Mexico again and pursue that. And 6 years later, I was told that I was the first Mexican woman to earn a PhD in physics from Stanford.
Wow.
And I'm still, very good friends with my advisor. And, I still try to keep myself updated into all the research papers and all that in physics. What I do now is similarly complex. It's called data science, and I do research and write curriculum in the areas of machine learning and artificial development. The difference is that physics tries to study nature and data science typically tries to study and understand business. And that's a big difference, right? So the data doesn't come from nature and from experiments that we do about particles or baseballs or fluids, etc. The data actually comes from businesses. And so we try to model what happens when people's behavior changes or operates in a certain way. And so, for example, I may help an insurance company look at their data and find out insights about how people, what makes people buy a certain kind of insurance, and what, how to predict the probability of default better, and so on. And so I use the vast amount of data that we have created with the internet and apply modeling and computational and mathematical skills in order to gain insights about how different businesses operate.
Oh, wow. That's fascinating. It's very interesting. And when it comes to becoming a data scientist, what would you think is key skills that people should have in order to pursue those fields, either data science or if they want to pursue physics or just overall STEM fields?
We always say that after a pretty basic knowledge of mathematics, mostly algebra, perhaps a little bit of calculus, and some computational ability, we always ask that our applicants for the data science bootcamp either take an intro course in programming Python that anybody can do, or that they do some free course like on Coursera, or learn Python the hard way, or many other things that are available out there. Now, given those minimum requirements in terms of technical ability, we always say that the requirements to become a successful data scientist are grit, resilience, and curiosity. And if you're
Yeah.
missing any one of those three, you're not going to have probably a good time in the field, because data science is a very kind of trial and error field. It's amazing if you're very curious about something and you really want to solve a problem or find the answer to something. So that's why you need to be curious. You need to have grit, because there will be many times when the data will lead you astray, or the data will point to the wrong conclusions, or your work will not be what the company needs, or they won't invest money in actually executing your ideas. And then you need to be resilient, because sometimes it's a vast field, and learning a ton of material in becoming what we call an expert in a certain subject, domain expertise, doesn't mean that that domain is transferable to a different domain. So you always have to kind of start from scratch when you're solving a problem in a different type of business or a different type of problem. And so you need to be a resilient person. So I would say those three are the most important ones.
As you have educated people to enter into the STEM fields, are there any misconceptions of or things that you wish potential students would pursue or cultivate more of, or just any particular misconceptions that you see when people try to enter that field?
Absolutely. I think a lot of people think that science is very different from art and very different from creative endeavors and creative thinking. They think that science is exact, and they confuse that because they confuse that to mean that science is pretty much memorizing a bunch of facts and having to answer a questionnaire that you have to learn. So if you're a good physicist, you're going to know if I give you a multiple choice exam, and you're going to be able to choose exactly the answers. And that's how physicists think. Well, it could not be more different than that. I mean, the best physicists are nothing short of artists, and their creative thinking is super engaged. It's a field where we are constantly trying to find increasing approximations of the truth. But that does not mean that we claim to know the truth, or that the truth is static and cannot change. In fact, if you're a good physicist, Richard Feynman, a very famous physicist who was amazing, said, it's very easy to fool ourselves, and it's the easiest person to fool when you want to believe something is one way. So as scientists and as physicists, we need to doubt authority, doubt yourself, because we are the ones who should be the most willing to change our minds about when we acquire new evidence about the world. And people don't think that, and because often physics is taught in a very mechanical way, which is not the right way. My husband is a physics professor, but he's also an amazing mentor. And when he teaches undergraduate students physics, he often has them do experiments that are really enjoyable. They go out to the parking lot and they create a clock with a few stone rocks and a stick to project the shadows on the ground at different times of day, and just to kind of experiment what it was like to be with nature alone, and how would I solve that problem. And I just think curiosity is endless, and when people have a piece of the actual experience of discovering things, they can fall in love with science.
That's great. That's fascinating advice. And I was under the impression as well that when it comes to those sciences, that it has to be very precise, and the way you describe it is quite interesting in terms of looking at it as an art form, and just discovering and solving problems. That's great.
It is true that many of our measurements are incredibly precise. Mm-hmm. So, it would be hypocritical to say that everything is, there's an opportunity to create in every aspect of physics. Some, numbers like pi, we know to thousands of digits, and we've measured the charge of the electron to incredible precision. But in other areas, we can discover that you can be creative. I remember that for my PhD dissertation, I decided to try something out that my own advisor was saying, I don't think it's going to work. I don't think it's going to work. And I had to be very creative and sort of go against his will and his opinion to try and rebel and do something different. And it turns out that it did work.
And what was it?
So I did my PhD in condensed matter, which is everything that we can see and touch, and even things we can't see and touch, like quantum fluids and stuff like that. But I actually did something more applied, and I focused on waves, how waves, being light is a wave, or sound is a wave, or electromagnetic waves like from our cell phones, how they get affected by different objects when you use a technique called time reversal. And time reversal, I know it sounds very esoteric, like the movie, going back in time, but it has nothing to do with that. It only means reversing the order in which a series of waves, perhaps you can think of it as a series of sounds, arrive at a point. So if I say the word hello to you, you first receive the H, then the E, then LLO. Time reversing it only means that when you send that to me, you would say the word in reverse order. So you would say ole, and I would first get the O, then LLEH. That's all it means. So when you do that with waves, it turns out that this incredible thing happens, that they actually focus in a very precise location. So for my dissertation, I invented a method to focus waves. That is, you can focus a movie because that's waves. You can focus a song, a speech in a very precise location indoors. So for example, if you're at the UN and you want somebody without any cables, without any interference, to focus a speech in Italian in one seat, and right next to that person focus it in Spanish without interfering, you can do that using this method to focus waves.
Wow, that's amazing. That's great. Now, before I let you go, I want to know, in terms of what will be a good lesson or key advice that you suggest that people should start with in order to cultivate that curiosity.
Yes. I think curiosity is a muscle. I'm convinced that it is, because I see how I try to teach my kids, and I teach young women, and I teach adults, and I do workshops and whatnot, where I try to instill that curiosity in people. And it's incredible, because even after just 1 hour sessions or a workshop, or when you work with kids, you exercise that. Instead of just giving the answer to a question to someone, try to go through the process of discovery with them. Put it on a board and think critically about the world. Well, if this was true, what would need to happen? And then you write the things, and then does this follow from that? And then you use other sort of principles. If you're talking about nature, of like, it could, something broken in the floor all of a sudden reconstruct and become the original thing. I don't really see that a lot. So maybe, that can't happen. It's usually the other way. And so just, using the art of the Socratic way of having people question how they think, I think it's the perfect way to instill curiosity. And you can choose any subject. You can be curious about anything. I mean, the other day I was teaching my daughter about pH, like how to measure the acidity of things. And it came about because we were baking a pizza, and she tried, I love lime juice, and because I'm from Mexico, we eat everything with lime, and and it was very, and she was trying to find the word. She's 4 years old, so she couldn't find the word acidic. And then I said, this is a great segue to a lesson. So I said, this is very acid, and this is very spicy, and we're trying all kinds of foods. And then I decided to teach her how we can measure the acidity of things. So I boiled a purple cabbage, and it turns out cabbage juice is a great it determines the pH of things. It either turns red or blue depending on the acidity of things.
Oh, okay.
So if you put that juice in lemon, it's going to turn quite red because it's very acid. If you put it in a base, it's going to turn quite blue. And so she could predict, she could already say, why? Because lime tastes very acidic. So how about vinegar? Yeah, it also tastes pretty yucky. But how about salt, or I don't know, some other liquid like that's not acid, milk? And so she would say something else. And so that alone, that questioning and using the experiment immediately gets the kids and people involved in the process of finding out.
That is great. And that is great advice, reminding us to kind of just, because sometimes we just go do our jobs and go with a particular flow without questioning things, and cultivating those things is a reminder and will help us definitely learn more and achieve more. Definitely.
Yeah.
I certainly, again, appreciate your time and all the key advice that you have given us today.
Yeah, thank you for the work that you're doing. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Hardcore Soft Skills Podcast. If you have learned something today, share this episode with others. To find out about new episodes and skills to learn from, subscribe via your favorite podcast platform, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Stitcher. For more resources, visit our website, hardcoresoftskillspodcast.com. Thank you for listening.